Alright, this video is pretty much just to highlight a maybe trick as well. And I want to keep it focused like that because this is one of those things I think is very simple to explain. And I've been talking about this kind of idea my whole YouTube and longer. Basically, this is the foundation of my epistemology. Now, I came upon this, in my 20s, this basic attitude. Of course, the way I put it is changed. But I think even younger, 14 or something, I was exposed to the idea of solipsism, I think, in some Robert Heinlein book. And I wouldn't hear about the brain and the vat thing, but, I understood this before The Matrix came out. I was realizing that there's this difficulty with the leap from what we've seen in our life, including all our feelings, heard, everything we've sensed and felt, and this leap of faith to reality. Right? So I reduce myself to like Descartes, to, well, what is the part we know? And this is it. So this is my ontological thing. We have a film strip. It started, or it ended here, I guess I got it. Let's see, starts here and ends here. There's trippy parts, there's, parties, vacations or whatever. Right? It's a multi-track film strip. It has other sense data, sensovision and smell-o-vision and emotions and your hunger. But it's all in this film strip. And the traditional idea of truth is a correspondence theory of truth, that for something to be true, some idea you have at one point here, if it's a true idea, it's because it corresponds to what's in the so-called external reality. To me, external reality is fundamentally a theory that we know, like coordinate systems, there are alternate theories that can fit in there. The matrix, they might be contrived, that we're in the dream of a god, or that there's a matrix in which there's still a real physical world, but it's not the one we're being fed. And, they are a bit contrived, right? And that matters, right? Because we can take seriously the appearance that when we, go to a party, other people are actually there, okay, in this external world. But that's part of the theory. The epistemological justification for that is based on this film strip. And it seems obvious to me that any theory that you have about anything that's a truth or not truth, any qualification you give to any idea that you have, has to be about this film strip or part of it, right? It's not even reductive. It's a bounding condition. This is all we have, all the information about the world. So even if we find out something about the world, like what the stars will look like a year from now on a particular day, and we can make that prediction, and I have software that can make that prediction, and I can print it out, and then 5 years from now check, and it will be, I'm very confident it will be accurate. That software is true. And so does that correspond to the real world? No, it corresponds, well, maybe it does. This is the theoretical. What is the real world? But what it certainly corresponds to is those images involved, and me checking, and me running the simulation, seeing what it's supposed to look like, going out at night and checking, right? It has to be about, so the correspondence is between an idea we have and some other, and the facts, the evidence in here. And that's unfortunate for dogmatists and whatnot, because it means that if somebody sees a unicorn and that's a hallucination, they're telling the truth when they say, I saw a unicorn. But that's just a problem we actually have in the real world. People are either lying about seeing a unicorn or they're telling the truth. And if they're telling the truth, then they're hallucinating. And we have to deal with that. When people report things, we have to deal with the fact that they are not, that there's noise in the signal that they provide us through their words, which again come as an experience in here of somebody saying something and us having to process it and decide what it relates to. If I go out in that forest and camp where they camped, am I going to see a unicorn? What's the chance of that? 0, 50%? What? We have to make these decisions. So that's what epistemology is ultimately about. Which of these frames in this strip do I trust? Because some are more consistent than other. If I'm the person that's seen a unicorn and I go back and back and I never see another one and I never see any unicorn poop and I just can't confirm that, I'm going to have to, like with faces in the clouds, I see them, but I don't think the faces are there. I think that's my mind recognizing something as face-like that is fundamentally a cloud, not a face. So when scientists present their interpretations as fact, as a skeptic, I always think that that's bogus. All they can really do is tell me what's going to happen in here. My problem with some people that are hating on science and scientists and think of it as a cabal is that the scientists, their interpretations may be flawed. That's not a problem because at least they're trying to make interpretations. It's worse when physicists say that none of the interpretations even matter. Fuck philosophy. But the reason that even that is okay and useful, I don't think it's good philosophically, but it's useful, is because what they are doing is they're saying how to predict what patterns I will see if I set situations up a certain way, right? An experiment is nothing but a contrived experience, right? I set all the lab up a certain way and then I run the experiment and I get a little part of my film strip. And if I can predict what that's going to be like and so on and so forth, then I'm relying on the experiment proving something, a correspondence between the idea that the experiment embodies and some part of this film strip. Now, a lot of people seem to feel that this idea limits you, like, oh, there is no world. But no, we don't know what the cause of this is. Theories about where the source of this, whether it's our own dream of a god, computer simulation, some sort of mechanical universe, to me, it defines what it means for there to be a mechanical universe, the fact that one frame relates to the other, that there's this idea of continuity. And when there is this discontinuity, I can actually detect, hey, that's probably a hallucination, even if I experienced it and it felt real. Right? And people think that this idea somehow separates us from reality, but it can't, because this strip is all the information we have. Everything telling us that there are other people, there's countries we've never been to, there's countries we have been to, that we understand this, that we know how to fix a car, that we don't understand how to fix our electricity. You know, all of these things, they're all actually about things that happen in this film strip. It doesn't matter if electricity is really an external thing in terms of it having existence in here. And its externality, when viewed as its repeating imagery in the film strip, is really about the consistency, right? We prefer and think of as real all the things. There's illusions in this film strip, but we can sort out what we think is real and most reliably through a measure of consistency. You know, if I see something, look away and look back and it's not there anymore, that's not consistent enough. That's not going to pass the test of something I think is real. Maybe it got knocked on the floor and it was real. I'm going to doubt it based on the consistency. And similarly, when people have persistent illusions, voices in their head or anything like that, and again, is it an illusion? No, there really is. They really are hearing a voice in their head. The head can create voices. It's just not from an external. The correspondence is to something in here that isn't having a correspondence to another agent, right? Because we really do go far. The real idea of externality becomes whatever it is between us and other agents. The fact that I can look at this sunset and say to my wife, hey, isn't that a beautiful sunset? And she goes, yeah, I'm seeing a sunset too. That the fact that we both have that image and can report it, which is really just me having the image, having an image of me reporting it to my wife, and then having an image of my wife reporting it to me, that becomes our idea of the external world. It's the world of imagery we seem to share with other agents. Right? So I always go back to this. When I'm criticizing science or plotting science, it's based on its ability to be ideas that correspond to imagery in the past and the future. Right? And it changes what I'm upset about when it comes to scientific interpretation, scientific statements. It changes, it affects when I read the science press and they make these, you know, it affects how I interpret a movie like What the Bleep. Are they really talking about this? Or is it all about having to make some leap to how things really work, separate from how the imagery really works. This is my actual ontology. This is what I think every human is limited to. Is there something beyond this film strip creating the photons and things that create it? It looks like that appears to be the case. But ultimately, for me to learn that or not, I'm going to only have imagery to compare and make that judgment based on. So it's really all about this film strip. By the way, I made everything in there as an impressionist because I feel, an important part of the film strip is that, yeah, it's a mixture of what we call illusion and reality. And it might all be illusion, and even so, if it was all an illusion, because we're in something, a computer simulation, we're still discriminating what we consider illusion and consider real based on its consistency in that film strip. Not its common sense nature. I don't expect the real rules of whatever's generating this stuff to fit to my common sense anymore, because it's already been proved weird enough that obviously we need to evolve our sense. The common sense folk wisdom of the past is not going to be sufficient. All right, I hope you understand how this affects these questions of properties and why, in my view, we consider properties. This thing has a property of a lot of red or warm colors. The film strip has properties. Is it out there? I don't know. Are there other ways to model it? Yeah, it looks like out there's better models than properties, which are just system dynamics and system behavior. Properties are actually persistent system behaviors. That's what it looks like. Because I'm going from the images and I'm saying what I call a property is really a persistent behavior of a system. Because if I go here and I zoom in on all the parts and look at it real scientifically and set it up in the lab so that I can have repeated frames, everything breaks down into systems, and things like red have to do not with a thing being red and having the property red, just my image has that property, but the thing itself seems to just be reflecting light that appears red because of the relationship of how my retina works, the color of the light source, and that sort of thing. All right, cheers.